Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ninja in Jujutsu Kaisen. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 121, Choso's Wrath. At this moment, Kenjaku finally stopped pretending. Gojo had been sealed, and he did not need to continue to hide his strength. This move was the ultimate technique of the cursed spirit manipulation, possessed by Geto Suguru. Thinking of this, Kenjaku couldn't help but sigh. Geto Suguru's talent was formidable. Theoretically, there was no limit to the cursed spirit manipulation technique. He would never have thought that this wonderful technique he developed bore a similarity to Jogo's maximum meteor. But he had improved it even further. Now, this technique could not only extract all the techniques of the cursed spirits but also absorb the techniques mastered by the cursed spirits for his own use. It allowed for flexible and varied attacks. As the vortex emitted a beam of light, it struck every Jujutsu high member. At the critical moment, the attack was blocked. Everyone looked closely and saw that Kyuzukabe had rushed onto the battlefield, alongside the furious Panda and Utaheim, who was buffing the two with cursed energy. Kyuzukabe said, we all know the plan. I'll do my best to hold them off until Yuki arrives. But let me make this clear. If I can't beat them, I'll run. It's impossible to end my life, not in this lifetime. As more and more people arrived, a trace of impatience appeared on Kenjaku's face. Although these people posed no real threat to him, no one could guarantee whether special-grade sorcerers would arrive. Once the special-grade forces intervened, the plan to kill Kazuma would be shattered. Thinking of this, he sighed and looked at Jogo and Uram. Kenjaku said, "You two still planning to just watch the show? If we wait any longer, Kazuma's genjutsu will end and he'll kill us." Hearing this, Uram stood up and glanced at Jogo. She said, "You find an opportunity to attack Kazuma. I'll deal with the people here." Jogo nodded and began looking for an opening. But who would have thought that Choso, who had remained silent until now, would suddenly explode in fury, his face incredibly dark. At this moment, he had finally recognized the true identity of Geto. "Kamo Noritoshi! You deserve to die." The sudden roar stunned everyone present. What? Everyone turned their eyes to Kamo Noritoshi, who had just arrived. Kamo Noritoshi, who was always indifferent, opened his mouth in shock and pointed at himself in disbelief. "Me?" Kenjaku closed his eyes and smiled faintly. He said, "You finally recognized me. But you're not entirely correct. Kamo Noritoshi is just one of my many names. I've played many roles, both male and female. How was it? Interesting, wasn't it?" At this moment, Choso didn't care about his words. He clenched his fists and stepped toward Kenjaku, his anger rising exponentially with each step. "You bastard! You actually had me kill my own brother." Choso's fury had reached its peak. It turned out that everything had been orchestrated by Kenjaku. The bloodbath, the deception, Yuji and even him, were nothing but disposable pawns in Kenjaku's grand scheme. It was even possible that he had orchestrated his brother's death. The pride of an elder brother erupted completely. Everything Kenjaku had done was utterly unforgivable. Uram said, "Hey, I told you I can handle all of you bastards by myself." Uram suddenly blocked Choso's path, looking at the entire Jujutsu high group as if they were nothing but trash. Finally, her eyes rested on the furious Choso, and she sneered in disdain, "And you? You're just a slightly better piece of trash." Without a word, Choso began to condense burning hot blood in front of him. At this moment, he was completely blinded by rage. Anyone who dared to stop him from taking down Kenjaku would die. The terrifying pressure of his blood manipulation technique made everyone around him shudder. Jogo cursed inwardly. This bastard is really taking advantage of the situation. He's totally different from how he was in the subway station. If he had used this kind of power back then and attacked Gojo with everything he had, Hanami maybe he wouldn't have had to die. Meanwhile, Kamo Noritoshi at the back was completely stunned. Blood manipulation technique. There's no mistaking it. This overwhelming blood control, it far surpasses his own. Could it be that this man is connected to the Kamo clan? Swish! The furious attack began. A blood-red laser, condensed to its absolute limit, burst forth. Yuram immediately sensed the immense power within the attack and dared not be careless. Raising her hand, she conjured multiple layers of thick ice walls to block it. Boom! The blood-red laser pierced through layer after layer of ice walls before finally forcing Yuram back several steps. Only then did its energy dissipate. Seeing this, Choso didn't hesitate. He clapped his hands and controlled the laser to sweep toward Kenjaku and the others. Even they, as powerful as they were, did not dare to take the attack head-on. For a moment, all they could do was dodge. Boom! Wherever the blood-red laser passed, the ground beneath them was shattered into rubble. Even an unfinished building in the distance was sliced in half, collapsing with a thunderous crash. Seeing this, the students from Jujutsu High were just as confused. Panda scratched his fur in confusion. This guy isn't from our school, right? Tadu said, I ran into him on the way. He said he was Yuji's dearest Oniai-chan. Now it seems, he wasn't lying. Yutaheim chuckled and said, no matter what, this is good for us. At least his attack is effectively restraining our three enemies, isn't it? We just need to prevent them from attacking Kazuma. As for the prison realm that holds Gojo, leave that to Kazuma. She had always believed in her heart that Kazuma could win even if his opponent was Sukuna. Thinking of this, Yutaheim glanced at Kazuma and Sukuna, who were still locked in place in the sky. Suddenly, her eyes widened in shock, and her lips parted slightly. Chapter 122, Kazuma's Plan. Kazuma smiled at Yutaheim from high above, then put a finger at his mouth, making a shushing gesture. He actually woke up? Could it be that he wants to use himself as bait to deliberately attract the enemy to launch a sneak attack? That's right. Although there are only 3 people on the opposite side, they are all top-notch. If they want to escape, there is almost no chance of killing them. So, was all of this part of Kazuma's plan? Yutaheim couldn't help but shudder. What a terrifying guy. Not only is he powerful, but he can also control the battle situation in his hands. And the enemy he is facing is Sukuna. He actually still wants to plot against those 3 special grades? After thinking about it for a while, Yutaheim tried to calm down and pretend that she hadn't seen anything. What she needs to do now is to let nature take its course and not let the other party notice anything unusual. If the people from Jujutsu High suddenly evacuate, even a fool will be able to see that there is something fishy going on. In fact, Kazuma had just exited the Tsukuyomi space not long ago. He happened to discover this situation, so he planned to take advantage of it. He had handed over the job of torturing Sukuna to Yuji, who was currently stabbing Sukuna in the back. Sukuna was yelling and cursing in the Tsukuyomi space in an unpleasant way. Perhaps he couldn't accept that a weakling like Yuji could torture him at will? Choso's attack continued, but Yuram was unwilling to dodge any further. Yuram scoffed, rubbish, do you think that anger can make up for the difference in strength between us? Yuram leaped into the air, avoiding the sweep of the red blood ray, and stepped on a piece of cut gravel in the air. She sneered, put her hand to the corner of her mouth, and then blew out a breath of cold air. Frost calm. Whoosh! Suddenly, the cold wind howled. Pale blue ice crystals swept across the ground at an extremely fast speed like a toppling tsunami, freezing it instantly. The chill was cold, sweeping through everyone in an instant. Snap! In an instant, a lot of people were frozen in place by the huge block of ice. Even the flies flying low in the sky and the ants crawling in the cracks of the soil were frozen into ice sculptures in an instant. What? My body can't move. Tadu, Yutaheim, and the others who were about to launch an attack widened their eyes in horror. They were all frozen in place, unable to move, not daring to make the slightest rash move. Because any struggle may cause their body to be torn into pieces. What a powerful freezing curse technique. Is this the power of a sorcerer from the golden age of Jujutsu 1,000 years ago? While the others chose to use their cursed energy to slowly melt the ice, Choso didn't care at all. Although he was frozen, his eyes full of unwillingness stared at Kenjaku. At the same time, he controlled his blood to quickly heat his body surface, enduring the severe tearing pain to break the ice and free his hands first. Just a while ago, he had fought a life-and-death battle with Yuji. That had consumed a lot of his energy, and the blood production in his body could not keep up with the consumption. Moreover, after losing his mind just now, he had used the blood manipulation technique with all his strength without considering the consequences, which also exhausted him. But, so what? For Yuji's safety, even if he dies of exhaustion, it doesn't matter. Yuram sneered and first activated the reverse curse technique to heal her palm that was previously pierced by the blood. Then in an instant, she appeared in front of Choso. She condensed ice spikes on her fingers, and slowly stabbed them into Choso's eyes. At the same time, her other hand slowly raised. Ice fall. The pouring ice shards were as sharp as knives and accurately attacked the frozen sorcerers. However, the next second, all of Yuram's attacks were shattered, and the frozen sorcerers regained their freedom. Everyone focused on the front. A female voice sounded, "Sure enough, only by saving everyone at the right time can I attract everyone's attention." The only female special grade sorcerer in Jujutsu High had finally arrived at the battlefield. Yuki put her long hair behind her ears and looked at Geto. "Long time no see, Geto." "Tsukumo Yuki." Kenjaku completely put away his playful attitude and looked at the woman who had suddenly appeared in front of him with a serious expression. Everyone from Jujutsu High also looked at her with curiosity. The woman may not be seen even once a year. The one hangs out abroad all year round. The one who asks everyone she meets what kind of woman their type is. One of the 4 special grades, Tsukumo Yuki? Judging from what she had said just now, she had arrived at the battlefield a long time ago but didn't do anything until now. She wanted to save people at the right time, as she said? Seeing this, Kuzukabe didn't have much of an opinion. Instead, he shrugged his shoulders, took a long breath, and whispered, "Great! The special grade sorcerer has finally arrived. There shouldn't be anything for me to do next, so I might as well find a quiet alley to rest." Pandit grabbed Kuzukabe by the collar, lifted him up, shook him, and yelled, "Hey! Don't say that in public, we're all sorcerers, okay?" Kuzukabe was unmoved and said with a lack of motivation, "But I really want to go home." Tadu looked Yuki's back seriously. "It is this woman. My guide. My teacher." But the only thing he wants to complain about is that after tricking him into entering Jujutsu High, she just dropped the responsibility and disappeared. Yuki put one hand on her waist. She had a smile on her face the whole time, and turned to greet everyone. Afterward, she did not rush to launch an attack but continued to look at Geto. "I wanted to continue discussing what the best and most perfect solution to eliminate all cursed spirits in the world is. But it's a pity." Yuki sighed regretfully and said, "Because, you are no longer the same Geto from the past." Many years ago, the two had discussed this issue in a corridor. This indirectly accelerated Geto's path to evil. Yuki, who had started the topic, came up with 2 different answers to solve the problem of cursed spirits once and for all. Chapter 123, Jogo's Sneak Attack. The first is to free all of humanity from cursed energy. The second is to turn all humans into sorcerers. But now, she leaned more toward the first option. Suddenly, Yuki's expression shifted as if she had realized something. Could Geto's descent into darkness back then have been influenced by what she had said? No way. Well, Geto's betrayal did happen shortly after their conversation. But any sudden sense of guilt was quickly buried. Instead, a more pressing thought crossed her mind. She became unusually serious, staring at Geto intently. Seeing this, Tadu tensed up and stood straight as if facing a formidable enemy. Tadu said, "Here we go." Kuzukabe said, "Ah? Tadu, what are you talking about? What's coming? Is she about to unleash a big move? If that's the case, let's just run, retreat." Kyuzuke sheathed his sword, frowned, and subtly moved behind the crowd. The next moment, Yuki stepped forward and said, "Since you've occupied Geto's body for so many years, then, you should know what kind of women he liked, right? Tell me what I want to know, and I'll spare your life. This is very important to me, just like collecting stamps at comic conventions." As soon as she said this, excitement sparkled in her eyes as she eagerly looked at Kenjaku. Not only the students but even Jogo and Yuram were speechless. Are there any normal special grade sorcerers in Jujutsu High? They had researched information about them. Okatsu Yuta, who harbors pure love for a cursed spirit. Yuki, who asks everyone about their type. And the gambler who was fired long ago, Kinji Hikari. So, was Kazuma actually the most normal one? Kyuzuke's mouth twitched violently and he said, "That's it? I thought she was about to use some powerful technique. Also, could you not act like you're facing a final boss?" The moment he received orders to join the Shibuya battlefield, Kyuzuke had made up his mind. If he got even a single scratch, he would leave immediately. Nothing was more important than his personal safety. At the same time, Mai and the others in Tadu's class finally understood. So this was where Tadu got his habit of asking people about their type? Kenjaku shook his head and said, "Unfortunately, I hollowed out everything inside this body, including his brain. So, I can't answer your question." But when his memories were erased, nearly all of them revolved around Gojo Satoru. As for women, there were very few. Hearing this, Kenjaku shot a glance at Jogo beside him. The latter nodded, quietly shifting his gaze toward Kazuma, who still had his eyes closed in the air. "Really? What a pity. Guess I'll just have to kill you then." Yuki sighed, disappointed, and was about to activate her technique when... Boom! Jogo had bypassed everyone's sight and launched an attack on Kazuma in the sky. What? When did he? TSK. I didn't expect the sneakiest one to be this volcano head. Seeing this, Yuki had no choice but to abandon her technique and redirect her focus toward Jogo. At the same time, the Shikigami surrounding her coiled up and launched itself straight at Jogo. Jogo shot across the city, landing atop a high-rise building. A satisfied smirk crept onto his lips as flames roared in his hands. In a flash, he appeared beside Kazuma. Finally! A perfect opening. Even though it's a sneak attack, there's no helping it. You're just too strong. I will be the one to avenge Mahito and Hanami. As for Yuki's incoming attack, he wasn't concerned. Clang! Sure enough, a mirror-shaped cursed spirit materialized behind Jogo, deflecting Yuki's strike. At the same time, Yuram unleashed another ice technique. But this time, her target was only Tadu, the one who could teleport others instantly. The students watching gasped in horror. If Kazuma gets hit, his technique will break, and Sukuna will be freed. If that happens, Kazuma will either be seriously injured or die, then who could possibly stop Sukuna? Tadu kept dodging the freezing attacks, but he had no opening to activate Boogie Woogie. Only Yutaheim exhaled in relief, smiling. Finally, they took the bait. High in the sky, Jogo's flame-covered hand was inches from Kazuma's chest. If this attack lands while Kazuma is still unconscious, he'll be killed instantly. However, in the next second, Kazuma's eyes snapped open, and his hand clamped around Jogo's throat. It's easy to deal with you. Boom! A brutal whip kick connected with Jogo's face, twisting it out of shape as spit flew through the air. Jogo crashed into the ground with a thunderous impact, tumbling like a ragdoll until he finally came to a stop at Kenjaku's feet. Jogo clutched his swollen face, staring up at the sky in disbelief. Kazuma stretched his neck and gazed downward with a smile. How is this possible? When did he wake up? And since Sukuna hasn't escaped, that means the genjutsu is still active. Does that mean he had it all wrong from the start? Even though Kazuma was the caster, his actions were never restricted? In other words, Kazuma had always been awake. Damn it! That cunning bastard was just playing alone. Jogo was impulsive and short-tempered, but that didn't mean he was a fool. The realization hit him instantly. Kenjaku sighed, shaking his head. He knew their plan to kill Kazuma had failed, but Sukuna still hadn't woken up. Clearly, Sukuna alone wasn't enough to take Kazuma down. Ha ha. Kenjaku chuckled at himself, glancing at the prison realm in his hand. Gojo, it seems you were right. He may very well take the mantle of the strongest of this era. But do you really think this is all I've planned for over 1,000 years? Chapter 124, Sukuna breaks free. Thinking of this, Kenjaku swept his eyes over all the people and revealed an extremely ferocious smile. It seems that the 1,000-year-old plan will have to begin ahead of schedule. As he spoke, he squatted down and placed his hands on the ground. As an ancient sorcerer who had lived for 1,000 years, he had long prepared for the worst, even before the Shibuya incident. In exchange for providing 1,000 artificial cursed spirits, he had obtained a fragment of Mahito's soul, thus mastering the idol transfiguration. Idol transfiguration activate. As he finished speaking, the palm of his hand pressed against the ground, emitting a blinding glow. In an instant, a massive formation spread beneath his feet. As the purple light flared, obscure and ancient runes illuminated the ground. Everyone sensed an ominous presence and instinctively looked up at the sky. Lightning flashed through the darkness as a formation of runes covered the entire city. A deep, ancient bell rang across Shibuya. Then, a wave of cursed energy engulfed the land, accompanied by thousands of overlapping, blood-curdling screams that pierced the ears of all present. Cursed spirits that had slumbered for millennia erupted from the ground, ready to feast on Huma. 90. Ordinary people faced the brink of extinction. Across Japan, people screamed in terror. With his work done, Kenjaku shed the gentle mask of Geto. His expression turned purely malicious, his eyes gleaming with unrestrained cruelty. Well, Pandora's box has been opened. The cursed spirits I sealed away 1,000 years ago have been released. And those sorcerers who formed contracts with me centuries ago will soon awaken. They will overturn the world itself. At the same time, a black gate materialized behind him, and Kenjaku tossed the prison realm toward Yuki. If you want Gojo back, then participate in the greatest game in history. As for the name of this game, I call it the Culling Games. Finally, Kenjaku cast a deep glance at Kazuma, then smirked at the still dormant Sukuna and declared, with your strength at only 15 fingers, you can't kill Kazuma, let alone defeat Gojo. If you change your mind, we can work together. I know you can hear me, Sukuna. Now, let it be known, the Heian era, the golden age of Jujutsu, has returned. With one last wicked grin, he vanished into the darkness. At that moment, every sorcerer present fell into deep thought. Would the golden age of Jujutsu truly return? And what was the greatest game of all time, Culling Games? Yuki seriously said, this is bad. As a special grade sorcerer, she could vaguely sense the world shifting on a massive scale. Who was this person inhabiting Geto Sugiru's body? How could he be so powerful? Kazuma landed on the ground, deep in thought. From above, he had seen it all. Shibuya was now teeming with cursed spirits. Even though Kenjaku had failed to consume Mahito's true soul, the technique had still activated. If his memory served correctly, this ritual's completion would bring forth many formidable sorcerers. He understood what Culling Games meant. Yuta had once defeated 4 elite fighters single-handedly. Also, the gambling prodigy Hikari was in a battle against Kashimo, the strongest sorcerer of 400 years ago. Then came the inevitable clash between Jujutsu High and Sukuna. And one by one, the pieces would fall into place. Watch out! Just as Kazuma was deep in thought, Jogo and Uram launched a sudden attack. A frozen barrier sealed off Kazuma's escape, while Jogo summoned flames to engulf him. Yet Kazuma remained unshaken, activating Kamui. Their attacks passed straight through his body without leaving a scratch. As the smoke cleared, an overwhelming wave of cursed energy erupted from Kazuma, sweeping over everyone. Kazuma frowned slightly, his gaze shifting to Uram, who was now kneeling on one knee, bowing deeply toward Sukuna in reverence. So that was their true intention. This attack was never meant to harm him. Their goal was to awaken Sukuna. Now that Kazuma had lost control of the Tsukuyomi space, external factors could influence Sukuna once more. Yo, wake up. How was the experience? Kazuma showed no concern for Sukuna's potential rage and even teased him. One thing was certain, Sukuna's fury meant Tsukuyomi had tormented him greatly. He was simply too prideful to admit it. Sukuna reached out and gently touched Yuram's head. Yuram squinted in delight, her expression that of a loyal pet basking in its master's affection. Jogo's jaw nearly dropped. He had never imagined that the once imposing, ice-cold Yuram could turn into such a docile, eager-to-please servant with just a pat on the head. Sukuna-sama, 1,000 years have passed. I have longed for your return. Yuram's face flushed with excitement and she said, "It is my greatest honor to serve you again." Sukuna said, "Humph. You have always been the most loyal." Sukuna's crimson gaze shifted toward Kazuma, his lips curling into a murderous grin. Wait until I turn him into minced meat. Then, I'll enjoy your cooking once more. With that, Sukuna fixed his gaze on Kazuma. If looks could kill, Kazuma would have died 100 times over. Your genjutsu was quite amusing. If you had existed 1,000 years ago, it might not have been so easy for me to wipe out all those sorcerers. But in the end, that was nothing. To me, pain is nothing more than a tickle. Kazuma sneered, then open your eyes and say that again. Or, is the king of curses too weak to handle a little dust? If Tsukuyomi was just a tickle, then why had he kept all 4 eyes shut? So even Sukuna had his limits, huh? Put. Ha ha ha. Hearing Kazuma's taunt, Yuki burst out laughing. This Kazuma guy really had a knack for making people furious. If one looked closely, Sukuna's face was already turning an unhealthy shade of purple from sheer rage. What an interesting guy. She definitely has to ask him what kind of women his type is later. Sukuna-sama, please don't fall for his provocation. Chapter 125, Shibaku Tensei. Jogo, who was kneeling on one knee, was afraid that Sukuna would get excited and actually open his eyes. What if Kazuma cast another genjutsu? Wouldn't his previous warning be in vain? Yes, sir, this guy only uses these unorthodox methods to restrict you. Yuram echoed. Sukuna shook his head. Although he was more arrogant than anyone else, he had to admit that the genjutsu was powerful. And after several fights, he had realized that Kazuma was not simple. He had not yet recovered his full strength, and he could no longer underestimate him as before. Thinking of this, Sukuna grinned and spread his aura. For a moment, the cursed spirits wandering in every corner of Shibuya seemed to be summoned, roaring and rushing toward Kazuma. You two, go and consume his cursed energy together. Sukuna believed that Kazuma had used very big techniques continuously before. Coupled with the genjutsu just now, it must have consumed a lot of his cursed energy. If they want to kill Kazuma safely, they have to further weaken him. Yuki said, Kazuma, you just fight Sukuna, and leave the rest to us. Kazuma shook his head and glanced at Utaheim. Utaheim, who knew Kazuma well, understood immediately. She looked at Yuki and said, Ahem. Yuki-senpai, let's move away first. Otherwise, we will be affected. Besides, with us here, Kazuma might not be able to display his full strength. Yuki looked at the cursed spirits pouring in from all around, frowning in confusion. She said, I'm a special grade sorcerer after all, will I be affected as well? Although Kazuma's fight with Sukuna must be intense, as a special grade sorcerer, she shouldn't be unable to withstand the aftermath, right? The most important thing was that she seemed to have done nothing since arriving on the battlefield. It was fine to hold off Jogo and Yuram, but she couldn't really just stand by as a spectator, right? Tadu advised, Big sister, listen to Utaheim-sensei. He vaguely remembered that at the exchange event, Kazuma had used an extraordinarily huge Rasengan. That range, that damage. It was better to stay away. In order to prevent Kazuma from having any worries, I'll go first. Kusakade nodded repeatedly and turned around, leaving without hesitation. A battle of this magnitude was no longer something he could interfere with. Was he supposed to stay and be cannon fodder? Yuki sighed and said, "Fine, let's retreat 500 meters first. 500 meters is the maximum distance I can provide instant support. If Kazuma has an accident, I can still help." Soon, they evacuated to the ruined district 500 meters away. Yuki stood atop a building, looking in Kazuma's direction, and muttered with some disappointment, "Did we retreat too far? We can't even see the aftermath of the battle." It seemed she was eager to witness the duel between Kazuma and Sukuna. "I think this position is still dangerous." Looking back, she saw Mei and others arriving with the rest of the group. Yuki raised an eyebrow and asked, "Is it dangerous even this far away? Can Kazuma flatten all of Shibuya?" Looking at the battlefield in the distance where there was no movement, she felt a little impatient. Although she had exorcised powerful cursed spirits abroad, she still felt no pressure. As a berserker, she naturally felt itchy and wanted to fight Sukuna. She wanted to see how powerful the rumored king of curses really was. Also, no matter how wide the range of Kazuma's technique was, could it compare to hers? In the Jujutsu world, only a few people knew her technique, Black Hole. The ability to give herself imaginary mass. If she wanted, she could even summon a black hole. So, strictly speaking, there should be no one in the Jujutsu world whose cursed techniques have a greater power and range than hers. Suddenly remembering something, she tossed the prison realm to Nanami. From her impression, he seemed to be the most reliable among them. For a moment, everyone's attention was drawn to Nanami. Is this the prison realm that Gojo-sensei was sealed in? It's so ugly, with those densely packed eyes, a trypophobic nightmare. Curious as ever, Nobara took out a hammer and knocked it a few times, making a crisp metallic sound. The others leaned forward, trying to listen for any sounds from within. Well, if Gojo hadn't been sealed, would I have come all the way from abroad? At this point, Yuki wondered aloud, why would he willingly hand over the prison realm to us? Could it be related to the method of unlocking the seal? Forget it. I'll just let Gojo stay in there a little longer. The most important thing right now is Sukuna. At that moment, Kusakabe suddenly realized something and asked, "Do you feel the ground shaking?" "It seems, huh?" In the distance. Jogo and Euron looked at Kazuma and said smugly, "Use whatever moves you have left. Otherwise, when Sukuna-sama recovers, you won't have another chance." Looking at the cursed spirits rushing toward him frantically, Kazuma's eyes flashed with excitement. He looked at Sukuna and the other two, his left eye glowing purple, and grinned. He said, "Then I'll let you witness the power of the Rinnegan." Saying this, he bent his body slightly. Then, he suddenly kicked the ground, and grabbed the air on both sides with both hands. Chibaku Tensei. Boom! The earth trembled violently. At that moment, skyscrapers, cars, soil, and even underground subway stations were uprooted. As if affected by some mysterious force, they all gathered in the air and soon formed a massive sphere. Nearby, car alarms blared due to the violent shaking. Suddenly, the ground beneath Euron's feet began to crack, forcing the two to retreat. The power of the Rinnegan? What kind of unseen technique is this? Looking at the enormous sphere blocking out the moon, Jogo was completely dumbfounded. Is this a meteorite? If that thing fell, he'd be reuniting with Hanami and the others in no time. The cursed spirits beneath the meteorite trembled with fear and tried to flee in all directions. "Euron, we can't help for now, retreat!" Jogo shouted. Euron nodded blankly. She had also planned to withdraw for the moment. Keeping herself alive was the best way to assist Sukuna. Just as the two were about to escape, a figure flashed past, and a pair of large hands suddenly pressed down on their shoulders. Both of them were startled, their eyes widening. So fast. When did he? Chapter 126, Cutting the Meteorite in Half. Kazuma exerted a little force with his hands and said playfully, "You can't go anywhere before I clap my hands, or I'll burn you with black flames." As he spoke, Kazuma randomly picked an unlucky cursed spirit, and then his eyes locked onto it. The black flames of Amaterasu instantly devoured it. After a few screams, the ground turned pitch black, without even a trace left. For a moment, all the cursed spirits present held their breath and dared not move at all. Especially Jogo, he was so frightened that he broke out in cold sweat. He knew the power of this black flame all too well. If he is set on fire, and doesn't slash the affected part decisively, his end will be the same. Then Kazuma slowly raised his head, looked at Sukuna in the sky, who still had a proud look on his face, and smiled. The escape game is about to begin. After saying this, he clapped his hands lightly. Bang! The meteorite seemed to have received instructions and fell down at a high speed. Jogo, Uram, and the others ran away the moment Kazuma clapped his hands. In the distance, everyone looked up at the huge meteorite beginning to fall from the sky. Kusakabe swallowed his saliva and stammered, Are you kidding me? For those cursed spirits, what's the difference between such a horrific attack and an elephant dancing on the head of an ant? The most important thing is, it might affect us. Can he control the range of the curse technique a little bit? Kusakabe felt that his heart had suffered a considerable shock. Yuki looked at the huge meteorite in the sky and asked curiously, What kind of cursed technique is this? It can even uproot the earth. These meteorites are simply a mixture of a large number of buildings, cars, and soil blocks. You really didn't lie to me. Kazuma's techniques are all beyond the standard. Kazuma's first move had already been made. Now, it depended on how Sukuna would respond. At this moment, Yuki was extremely excited. This trip was not in vain. What a thrilling battle to watch! Looking at the huge meteorite falling at high speed, Sukuna spread his hands and sighed. It's really not that easy. I admit that you are strong, but... Sukuna grinned, formed seals with his hands, and uttered in a deep, magnetic voice. Domain expansion, malevolent shrine. As the Loan horse voice fell, a large scarlet shrine rose from the ground. A shrill wailing sound like that of a demon from hell echoed. It was as if a canvas from hell had appeared in the air. With Sukuna as the center, the domain instantly spread out, covering the meteorites in the sky. Cut it for me. As Sukuna's voice fell, the shrine opened its huge mouth, and countless slashes burst out from inside. Swish! The invisible slashes cut the meteorite madly. Broken stones kept falling from the sky. Kazuma would naturally not let Sukuna go easily. He raised his hands and a train came towards Sukuna quickly. Tisk! Sukuna sneered and raised his hand to point at the oncoming train. Dismantle! Swish! Countless slashes swept past, and the train was cut into countless neat and smooth cubes in an instant. Kazuma raised his eyebrows and threw a few more buildings towards Sukuna. But they were all chopped into pieces easily by Sukuna. But his goal had been achieved. A vortex appeared, and Kazuma disappeared instantly, leaving the area covered by the meteorite. He didn't want to be hit by the attack he had summoned. Ha! Sukuna stayed where he was, stunned. Suddenly, a huge shadow enveloped him. When he looked up, he saw that the meteorite had actually accelerated and was approaching his face. TSK! What a cunning fellow! He can even speed up the meteorite's landing speed. Come on! Sukuna was not afraid at all but instead showed a fierce look on his face, and his attacks became more intense. Boom! The huge meteorite crashed down, and the surrounding buildings were instantly blown away by the immense impact force. Accompanied by the screams of the cursed spirits that failed to escape the range of the meteorite, the area where the meteorite hit was instantly razed to the ground. Jogo and Uram, one supported himself on his knees, while the other simply knelt on the ground, gasping for breath. Madman! Kazuma is a madman! It seems that Sukuna has not escaped the range of the meteorite. Could it be that he? No! Sukuna-sama will win. Uram looked toward where Sukuna was with a determined gaze. Suddenly, a low and indifferent voice echoed in everyone's ears. Cleave! Swish! A huge slash shot straight into the sky, sweeping past and actually cutting the entire meteorite in half. Even the clouds in the sky were split in two. Sukuna's shirt was almost completely torn, revealing his upper body covered with curse patterns. Seeing this scene, Yuram stood up excitedly, as if forgetting her fatigue. I knew that Sukuna-sama would not be defeated by a mere meteorite. In the distance, everyone was also shocked. Cut in half? How could such a huge meteorite be cut in half by Sukuna? Even the clouds in the sky were parted in the middle. What a monster! But Kazuma was able to fight evenly with such a monster. Yuki's eyes burned, and she sighed, as expected of Sukuna, the king of curses from 1,000 years ago. He actually took on this attack. I'm really looking forward to the next battle even more. At this moment, Kusakabe suddenly stumbled back 2 steps and shouted, "Look at the sky!" Everyone followed his gaze and saw a figure slowly rising into the sky, his clothes rustling in the wind. Kazuma looked down, and the entire Shibuya came into view, with cursed spirits roaming in every corner. Sukuna and others below had become tiny ants in his view. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Cursed spirits, disaster curse, and Sukuna were all gathered here. Kazuma took a deep breath, opened his arms, and looked down. Under Sukuna's control, the cursed spirits once again forgot their fear and piled up together. They opened their bloody mouths towards him like zombies that had lost their minds. Sukuna returned to his own domain and quietly recovered his cursed energy. Chapter 127, Let the World Feel Pain. The use of the domain, coupled with the full-strength cleave he had used to cut through the meteorite, had consumed a lot of Sukuna's cursed energy. This is also the reason why he was not in a hurry to take action. But what made him feel depressed was that Kazuma had used large-scale cursed techniques many times, but his cursed energy was still not exhausted. It was as if the cursed energy in his body was infinite. No! This is impossible. He should be just like him, pretending to be relaxed on the surface. Jogo and Yuram continued to attack Kazuma in the sky. Flames and ice spikes kept attacking Kazuma in the air. But all this was in vain in the face of Kamui. Looking at Kazuma slowly rising into the air, Jogo had a bad feeling in his heart. Yuram gloomily said, "TSK. What is this guy thinking?" He suddenly stopped fighting. Does he think that he can solve the problem once and for all by flying into the sky? Although his strange state can allow any attack to pass through, it will also continue to consume his cursed energy. What's the point of him doing this other than constantly wasting his cursed energy? However, the next moment, a voice sounded. Accept pain. No pain. One who does not know pain cannot possibly understand true peace. Everyone below was stunned. Jogo disdainfully said, "What is this guy talking about? What's wrong with him all of a sudden? Is it true that there is not a single normal person among the special grade sorcerers in Jujutsu High?" He had thought that Kazuma was the only normal one among the special grade sorcerers in Jujutsu High. It turns out that he was wrong. Yuram sneered, "Ha, has he been frightened silly by seeing so many cursed spirits summoned by Sukuna-sama? He actually started talking nonsense? I guess the backlash from the genjutsu he used on Sukuna-sama before this was quite severe, right? He must have been forcing himself before. But Sukuna was different from the other two. He looked at Kazuma rising in the sky with serious eyes. Although they were so far apart, for some reason, he could vaguely sense a hint of danger. In the ruins. Yuki looked at Kazuma in the sky with great confusion. Ha? What is Kazuma talking about? No pain? Understand pain? I don't understand. Do you know what he is talking about? In response, the others shook their heads, indicating that they didn't understand. For some reason, Kusakabe had a bad feeling in his heart. He said, "Why don't we retreat another 500 meters? I don't understand what Kazuma said, but my right eyelid is twitching. Please trust my instincts." Everyone. Meimei lifted the hair that was blocking her eyes, took a look, and said seriously, "Pay attention to Kazuma's 2 eyes." Eyes? Everyone looked over. Although they were far apart, the pair of eyes, one red and one purple, were particularly conspicuous against the backdrop of the night. Nobara asked in confusion, "If I remember correctly, Kazuma's two eyes would turn scarlet when performing a cursed technique. As for the purple this time, it's the first time I've seen it. Could it be that he is going to perform a new technique? As soon as she finished speaking, Kazuma's voice came again. Let the world feel pain. Shinra Tensei. In an instant, the entire sky was illuminated by a dazzling white light. Night turned into day in an instant. A breeze blew by, and Jogo curled his lips. That's it? Next second. Boom! An incomprehensibly powerful and majestic repulsive force violently attacked. In an instant, the earth cracked, as if the end of the world had come. The huge impact force swept across like a flood. The buildings and vehicles along the way were instantly crushed into pieces. The countless cursed spirits below were forcibly crushed and exploded into a pool of blood without even being able to utter a single wail. Before Jogo and Yuram could react, they were blown away by the powerful gust of air. The repulsive force was like a huge rock weighing 1,000 pounds pressing down. They felt that their internal organs could not bear the burden and were almost crushed. Their eyeballs were bloodshot and about to explode, and even breathing became difficult. The two had only one thought in their minds at this moment. What kind of terrifying power is this? If they didn't know that Kazuma had performed this technique, they might have really thought that a god had appeared to punish them. Even Sukuna only managed to hold on for a moment before flying out like a cannonball. The powerful repulsive force of Shinra Tensei continued to spread, and it seemed that it was going to overturn the entire Shibuya. In the ruins in the distance, Kusakade wanted to cry but had no tears. He shouted, "Hold on. Otherwise we will all be doomed. This Kazuma is such a lunatic. Does he want to destroy all of Shibuya? I told you to retreat a little further but you didn't listen. Now we might really die under the aftermath of our own allies' technique." Panda struggled to hold on and said, "Stop yelling. Who knew his technique would be so outrageous? Now all we have to do is to work together to cast a barrier to resist the aftermath." Everyone gritted their teeth and used all their strength to support the barrier. They could clearly feel that the repulsive force from their side was smaller. Obviously, Kazuma was in control. But even so, it was still extremely difficult for them. On the other hand, Yuki was not nervous at all. Instead, her eyes were shining, and she stared at Kazuma in the sky with a burning gaze, revealing an extremely excited expression. Really flattened? Before, she had just casually complained that Kazuma couldn't flatten the entire Shibuya. But she had never expected that he would actually do it. Yuki said, "Powerful. It's so powerful. It can actually have such a destructive power. What is the name of this technique?" "No. This can no longer be described as a technique, it should be called art." Tadu speechlessly said, "Teacher, don't be so excited, the barrier is about to break." Chapter 128, Jogo's Death. Nanami exhaled in relief. Thankfully, most of the nearby civilians had been evacuated beforehand. Otherwise, he couldn't even imagine how many people would have been harmed or killed from this single move. If the higher-ups decided to hold them accountable. No, he shook his head at the thought. The higher-ups? With that kind of power, would anyone still fear those in charge? The entire Jujutsu world should consider itself lucky that Kazuma is not a curse user. Shinra Tensei's repulsive force spread swiftly, sweeping away everything in its path, instantly annihilating all the cursed spirits in Shibuya. People outside the area could feel the violent tremors from afar. The local police had already set up a perimeter and sealed off the scene. Residents huddled inside their homes, too terrified to make a sound. What's going on? Did a massive earthquake hit? And what were those monsters that slaughtered humans earlier? This is clearly the end of the world. Shibuya's thriving center has been reduced to ruins. The aftermath lasted for more than 10 seconds before gradually subsiding. The people from Jujutsu High let out a collective sigh of relief. Looking at the devastation in the once bustling center of Shibuya, they could only smile bitterly. This had been the heart of the city, yet now, the tall buildings and crowded streets were nothing more than rubble. The massive crater was filled with blood and flesh, remnants of the destructive power unleashed. In the crater, half of Jogo's body had been crushed, his face drenched in blood. The black flames of Amaterasu engulfed him entirely. Jogo's heart finally gave way. He didn't resist anymore because his head was already ablaze. The moment his head had caught fire, his fate had been sealed. The flame that can't be extinguished. It's so unfair. I'm a disaster curse. Jogo lay in the deep pit, letting the black flames consume him. He looked up at Kazuma, his expression blank. An overwhelming sense of helplessness surged within him. Unkillable. This guy is invincible. As the Amaterasu flames continued to burn, Jogo's vision blurred. Suddenly, he found himself in a bright space. Hanami, Mahito, and Dagon were waiting for him. Jogo froze for a moment before shaking his head with a bitter smile. I am sorry. I couldn't avenge you. Hanami raised his hand, gently touching Jogo's head. He said, thank you for your hard work. Geto's got this. Dagon, recovered from his cursed fetus state, nodded in agreement, his round eyes gleaming. Mahito sat cross-legged, resting his chin in his hand. Hanami's right. Even if Geto has been manipulating us, his goals align with ours. Moreover, he can continue growing stronger, with almost no limit. My idol transfiguration has been passed to him. That's why we chose him as our leader in the first place. Hearing this, Jogo slowly raised his head and his eyes regained their fighting spirit. Ha ha ha. You're right, Geto will definitely succeed, and we'll be the new humans. It doesn't matter if we're wiped out. It doesn't have to be me who laughs loudly 100 years from now. After all, we're the pioneers of the new human race. That's enough. If I have one regret. Jogo paused and looked deeply at Hanami and the others. When we're reborn, we won't remember what happened before. I wonder if we'll meet again then. Hanami, would you still be willing to make a pipe for me? Hanami turned his head away, snorting softly in response to Jogo's hopeful gaze. Even if I lose my memories, I still won't let you destroy the forest at will. I'll still look after you. Mahito gently stroked Dagon's smooth head and smiled. It seems the two of us are a little redundant. But Dagon, you're cuter this way. I made you suffer to save me. If there's a next time, I'll protect you. Well, don't be sad, both of you. The forest and earth are one. It's hard to separate them. Let's welcome the new world in another form. Think of it as 100-year-long sleep. I look forward to meeting you again. Meanwhile, Kazuma landed and looked toward where Jogo had been. The black flames had already extinguished, leaving nothing behind. Kazuma looked at the piece of skin he had torn off from Jogo. Jogo's skin, Hanami's blood, Mahito's hair, and Dagon's tentacles. I wonder if I can use these alone to bring them back. Kazuma shook his head and put the thought aside. There was still one last thing to do. In the distance, within the ruins, a gigantic hand, covered with curse patterns, broke through the earth as Sukuna slowly climbed out of the deep pit. Ahem! Sukuna clutched his chest, surveying the destruction around him blankly. It was desolate. Almost all the buildings were destroyed. Ha ha! What a formidable opponent! He has a technique that can obliterate everything. But, your cursed energy should be depleted by now, right? Suddenly. Whoosh! A dagger with a cold gleam sliced through the night air, appearing before Sukuna's eyes in an instant. Sukuna sneered and raised his hands to catch the dagger. Has he really been reduced to using a dagger? Even if he stands still and lets him stab. Before Sukuna could finish his thought, his eyes widened in shock. Almost instantly, the dagger was seized by a pair of large hands. Then, 2 fingers attacked his eyes. Sukuna was stunned and enraged. He had been forcibly blasted out of his domain by Kazuma's ultimate move. Now, Sukuna had entered CT burnout. Chapter 129, Kazuma becomes a target. Kazuma is well aware of this. Even for strong people like Gojo and Sukuna, there are limits. They still cannot escape the limitation of the domain. Simply put, once the domain is opened, a large amount of cursed energy will be consumed, thus entering a burnout period. For a short period of time, they will not be able to use any techniques. Therefore, Sukuna is unable to use slashing attacks now, which is the best time for Kazuma to attack. Ah! Blood spurted out, and Sukuna staggered back, covering his bleeding eyes. At this moment, Sukuna was so angry that his whole body was shaking. When had he ever been so humiliated? Even 1,000 years ago, when facing the joint encirclement and suppression of countless powerful sorcerers, he had never suffered such an insult. Kazuma stretched out his middle and index fingers, pointed them at his eyes, and then looked at Sukuna. How does it feel? The system mission stated randomly poking Sukuna's 2 eyes, so Kazuma considered not letting Yuji become blind. He chose the 2 small eyes on both sides of Sukuna's cheekbones. The unprecedented humiliation did not make Sukuna lose his mind, but instead calmed him down. At this moment, he recalled what Kenjaku had said to him before he had left. He was dismissive of that at the time. He thought that he didn't need to recover to his prime to kill Kazuma. But now it seems that it is obviously impossible. Sukuna took a deep breath and looked at Kazuma. He said, "Very good, in 1,000 years, you are the first person who dares to do this to me. I've made note of this. I look forward to our next showdown." After saying that, Sukuna looked at Kazuma and smiled evilly. After wiping his neck, he took the initiative to hand over the control of body to Yuji. Now he should go back to Yuji's body first, recover from his injuries, and plan the next step. The reason why Sukuna doesn't like to use tricks is because there is no one who is worthy of him doing so. But now it's different. He will make Kazuma pay a heavy price for this. As the cursed lines gradually disappeared, Yuji's consciousness regained control. He opened his eyes tiredly and said weakly, "Kazuma, I'm lucky to have you this time, otherwise I don't know how much blood would be stained on my hands." After saying this, Yuji's body began to stagger and fall towards the ground. Just then, "Best friend." Tadu clapped his hands and changed positions with Kazuma. Kazuma's mouth twitched, and he came to Yutaheim's side in an instant. And Tadu took his previous position. Then, Tadu gently placed his hand on Yuji's shoulder. Choso said, "Brother, I'm sorry for making you suffer. Take your hands off my brother." Choso's eyes were extremely cold, and a line of blood condensed from his fingertips and pointed at Tadu. Tadu said, "Brother? You two are totally different. You said he was your brother? If you want to fight, I don't mind joining you." Tadu slowly put Yuji on the ground and looked at Choso as if he was ready to fight. The atmosphere gradually tensed. Just when the two were about to fight, Yuji struggled to open his eyelids and looked at Choso with complicated eyes. He asked, "Why didn't you kill me before? Also, you called me brother?" Hearing this, Choso immediately climbed down, not caring about his image at all, and said excitedly, "It was my fault that I accidentally hurt you. From now on, I will always be by your side. I will eliminate all dangers for you, even if it means I will die. Quick! Call me Oniai-chan first. This is more important to me than my life." He looked at Yuji with great anticipation. Yuji. Things had changed too suddenly. Before, Choso was willing to kill him at all costs, but now he suddenly wants to protect him at all costs? What is going on here? Looking at the strange looks from the people in front of him, Yuji felt embarrassed. So, he simply tilted his head and chose to faint. Seeing this scene, the students looked at Yuji, Tadu, and Choso with meaningful eyes. Kazuma quipped, "Yuji's domain has activated." Nobara looked at Kazuma curiously and asked, Yuji's domain? What does that mean?" "Nothing, don't ask about adults' affairs." Kazuma touched her head and smiled. Calculating the time, it seems that Nobara is not even an adult yet, she is just a 16-year-old girl. Nobara resisted the urge to hit Kazuma with the hammer. Humph. Since he saved me again, I won't bother with him. Yuki looked at Todu's jealous expression and sighed. I remember he wasn't like this at first? Soon after, everything that happened in Shibuya was known to the higher-ups. The atmosphere in the room was solemn. An old voice sounded, I have already decided on the list of people to be sentenced to death. Notify Yuta to come over. He will be the executioner this time. The Shibuya incident ended tragically. Gojo was sealed, the 4 disaster curses were all eliminated, a large number of ordinary people died, and the entire center of Shibuya was destroyed. This was a huge loss to the country. The atmosphere in the room was so solemn that you could hear a pin drop. A young man with a long sword on his waist was standing in the center of the empty room. He was none other than the special grade sorcerer who had returned from Africa, Okatsu Yuta. Yuta looked through his bangs and scanned the surrounding doors. He knew that the higher-ups of the Jujutsu world were behind the door. I'm here, what do you want from me? A majestic old voice sounded, Yuta, it seems that the experience in Africa has transformed you. We are very pleased. In response to this, Yuta frowned, feeling somewhat unhappy. The experience in Africa has indeed made him improve a lot, but what does it have to do with them? And this time, he had ended his training early just for Gojo. He already knew the general situation about Shibuya, but he was more concerned about the sealed Gojo. At this time, a stamped paper list flew into Yuta's hands. Kill order list? Yuta looked forward with a puzzled look. Chapter 130, Kazuma's Deeds. A voice sounded again. As you can see, this is a list of people to be executed. And you will be the executioner this time. 1. We have confirmed the fact that Geto is not dead. After our discussion, we have once again issued a kill order against him. 2. Yuji's suspended death sentence has been changed to immediate execution. The threat he possesses is immeasurable. 3. Imprison Kazuma for life. Imprison him in Tombs of the Star Corridor and hand him over to Master Tengen for custody. Reason: his reckless use of curse technique has caused great losses to the country. 4. Permanently expel Gojo, and anyone who attempts to unlock his seal will be sentenced to death. Considering various factors, you only need to take the lead in executing 1 or 2 of the above. As for Kazuma, I will let others take him to the Tombs of the Star Corridor. Yuta didn't interrupt the senior executive's words. He was no longer the timid boy he used to be. How he makes decisions is his business. He naturally has a scale in his heart to measure right and wrong. After thinking for a while, he looked around expressionlessly and said calmly, "Leave it to me." After saying that, he quickly left this disgusting room. After Yuta left, another senior executive spoke up, "Did you miss one?" A deep voice came from behind the door. "Are you talking about Yaga's execution?" "Haha, we need to hide it from Yuta. If Yaga is willing to offer the method of making cursed corpses, he can be pardoned from death immediately. He can even be promoted to become the 5th special grade sorcerer. Let Gakkaganji handle this matter. I hope Yaga can make the right choice." The other senior executives did not object to this, but instead agreed with it. They have long coveted Yaga's ability to create cursed corpses. This technique itself is not uncommon. However, only the cursed corpses created by Yaga have the consciousness to act independently. Most importantly, the cursed corpses absolutely obey the orders of its creator. This is also something that they attach great importance to. At the same time, Yaga also possesses huge hidden dangers. If he wanted to conquer the world, he could quietly build a powerful army of cursed corpses without anyone's knowledge. This terrifying ability must not be owned by just one person. The safest option is to hand it over to them. In the past, they'd only dared to think about it. But now the biggest threat, Gojo, has been sealed. No one can stop their decision anymore. Except for the one named Kazuma, who still possesses a slight hidden danger. But they believe that Master Tengen will deal with him. In the meeting room of Jujutsu High, the atmosphere was completely different. Yaga was lying on the bench, looking at the people below with a smile. Thankfully, Kazuma was there this time, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. He was greatly stressed because the Shibuya incident had happened too suddenly. Not only that, the enemy was also extremely powerful and cunning. This made him very worried and he couldn't sleep the whole night. He thought that many people might be sacrificed this time, but he didn't expect that everyone would return safely. Wasn't Gojo sealed? Wasn't Kazuma restricted by the curtains and unable to participate in the battle? But the final result is so perfect? He even doubted whether he was still dreaming. Thinking of this, Yaga looked at Mei and asked, Mei, I heard that you dealt with the special grade cursed spirit smallpox deity? Can you tell me what its cursed techniques were? Yaga opened a thick book that recorded all the cursed spirits known so far. But the content regarding smallpox deity was blank. Mei smiled slightly and shook her head. She said, I did encounter this special grade cursed spirit, but I was not the one who actually exorcised it. At that time, Ui and I were ready to fight to the death, but Kazuma suddenly appeared and killed it. In short, he was the one who saved me. You can ask the higher-ups to transfer the reward for killing the special grade cursed spirit to Kazuma's account. Everyone became silent. What is the difference between giving the money to her or Kazuma? What? Mei-sensei was also saved by Kazuma? Nobara stood up excitedly. When she noticed that everyone was looking at her, she smiled awkwardly and sat back in her chair. What I meant was that I was also saved by Kazuma. If it weren't for him, I would have been carried back here by you guys, wrapped in a white cloth. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other, thinking about something. Yaga suddenly realized and said, I see, that's why no one died in such a desperate situation. It turns out that Kazuma took action. I didn't expect that he could save two people even when he was being targeted. Ahem. Nanami coughed and raised his hand. Actually, Before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by the shocked Yaga. You were also saved by Kazuma? Nanami's mouth twitched. It was embarrassing for him to need the help of the younger generation. But, he'd better say it out loud, so as to pave the way for finding reasons to take leave and go on vacation later. He doesn't want to wait any longer to go to Malaysia. He wants to go on a spontaneous trip. Yes, I was already exhausted, and Mahito was just about to touch me at any time, and then Kazuma appeared. When these words came out, everyone was stunned. Another rescued one? Kazuma was chasing after the special grade cursed spirit, and he actually had the energy to save people? At this time, Ijichi and Nida, who were sitting in the back, stood up. We too know. It should be said that the entirety of assistant supervisors should thank Kazuma. Otherwise, I don't know how many more people would have fallen victim to Haruta's murderous hands. When these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. That wraps up this part of What If Ninja in Jujutsu Kaisen. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.